Never in the history of the world have the merchants of obscenity had available to them the modern facilities for disseminating this filth. Disseminating this filth. The onslaught of the communist masters of deceit.
Pinko, Commie, Slutz. Pinko, Commie, Slutz. Pinko, Commie, Slutz. Pinko, Commie, Slutz.
Hello.
Hi, Marlowe. How are you?
Yeah, it sucks.
What sucks?
Yeah, daylight saving time. I hate it.
Sure. It's really stupid, right?
Yeah.
What do we need it for?
What is it good for? Absolutely nothing. Huh.
Isn't someone getting rid of daylight savings time?
I think Ed Markey is talking about it, which he says we should make it permanent, whereas I argue that standard time should be the correct time because it's called standard time. And also it lets me sleep in an extra hour, and I understand that doesn't objectively matter at all, but yeah, it's the better time.
Yeah, I agree.
Hello.
Hello, Steve's here.
Here, finally.
Just complaining about daylight savings.
Saving.
Yes, I know. I said saving because I also watch the same media that you do.
It's useless. I'm not quite sure why it exists. Nobody does. And everybody says it wrong.
I can tell you why it doesn't exist, and that is it has nothing to do with farmers. And if anyone tells you it does, you call them a liar.
Wasn't it? I heard it was something to do with either candy or
what?
Golfers.
Neither, but I'm fascinated by what you.
Well, there was. I heard they're more like rumors, but I heard that there was a push by candy manufacturers to make it so that the sun went down earlier before Halloween.
Doubt it.
To get more hours for the kids to go out trick-or-treating.
One, I doubt that, and two, I'm not even sure if that works out.
And the golfers thing is to give them an hour in the morning longer.
I do remember arguing with my friends as a kid back before they decided to push the return of God's time back another couple of weeks. So daylight saving time actually did generally start Halloween weekend-ish. And I do remember consistently getting into arguments with my friends trick-or-treating where they're like, we'll meet at this time. And they were like, where are you? And I'm like, it's not that time yet. If we switch clocks, you fucking heathen.
Or maybe it was that the lobbying was to get the date switched to a certain date because it hasn't remained the same all the time.
Well, yeah, no. I mean, when I was a kid, it was generally late October was the switchback, and now it's definitely into November. So, yeah, that's within our lifetimes. I think it has to do with World War II rationing. Most horrible things do.
I think I would have been good at rationing.
Why do you say that, Bunny?
Because I enjoy impulsively dividing up my meager means to last me longer.
I like putting vegetables in jars of salted water, so I think
you do like that. I'm a little bit into, freeze drying things and a little bit of light canning.
I don't think they had freeze dryers back in olden times.
Not freeze dryers, but dry, whatever, sun,
Oh, okay.
It's drying it out. I'm drying it out is what I'm referring to.
I would have definitely enjoyed a war effort garden.
Oh yeah, that sounds lovely.
Like the war garden was it? Yeah, it was called war garden.
You know what I would have liked to do? I would have liked to be 10 with a bunch of my young friends going around for a scrap drive. That sounds fun. It's like trick-or-treating, but for bits of metal. Yeah,
it would have been Turbo Kid.
Yeah, well, like Turbo Kid, except it's the 1940s.
Yeah.
and we all talk funny.
Or do we talk real cool?
We all talk old-timey, but as we call it, normal. We're like, hey, toots.
Hey, toots, it was International Dames Day.
Yeah, and it would be the bee's knees if I could get that tin can that contained disgusting brown spinach from you.
Did you do anything for International Women's Day?
Nope.
It was directed at Bunny, but
yeah, but I didn't either.
Yeah. No, I did not. I did joke that I like to wait to celebrate Galactic Femmes Day. But, yeah, I mean, Women's Day. Which Women's Day? Isn't there a second Women's Day?
No, there's one, and it was, in fact, founded by the Soviet Union as International Working Women's Day. It was adopted and then changed by the UN. But, yeah, no, it's not like Labor Day versus May Day. There's only one of them.
Yeah.
My favorite International Women's Day story is last year, and I might have told this last year, because we're on our year cycle now.
Yeah.
We should do a hard pivot into something else super weird and just be like season 2.
Mansplaining International Women's Day to Bunny.
Well, this is the last movie we saw in theaters before the shutdown, which isn't to say we didn't see movies in places that they're open, but we saw a Portrait of a Lady on Fire on International Women's Day, which got all of the requirements. It was a lesbian movie from France. So it was both international and only women were cast. There was maybe one man who was on screen for like 30 seconds. But my favorite part of that is as I was walking out of the theater, I turned over and there was a woman who was staring up at the ceiling on her movie seat, just crying.
Okay.
She might have been on some type of ecstasy, but it seemed more like she was triggered by the, I guess, harrowing tale of the heroines, keeping their sexuality and their relationship a secret. But she was just laying flat down on the movie seat, just bawling her eyes out at the end. And I was like, International Women's Day.
Yeah, that's some like fucking 90s Lilith Fair shit right there.
Yeah.
I want to have a movie with an all-female cast that nonetheless fails the Bechdel test.
They just talk about men the whole time?
Every conversation is about men, and also half the cast is unnamed.
Oh, you could just call it Bechdel's test because it's a guy's test, right?
Oh, yeah, no, that could work. Yeah, no, yeah, we could just
it's
make it
not
a thing.
A guy's
It'll be a
test.
statement.
Well, wasn't Bechdel?
No.
Bechdel was a woman.
A woman.
She was like she was a lesbian comic artist in the 90s.
Yeah.
See, ruining my joke.
I mean,
Reality.
no, I mean, it's all like from the era of like
Riot Girls.
Yeah.
Word girls.
You do lesbian shit. You'd play some roller derby. You'd put on some Birkenstocks, play some acoustic guitar, sing songs about your period. It was a thing. Watch some Daria or Daria.
Daria?
Yeah. I pronounce it Daria and I pronounce it Mario, and I will not be told differently.
Daria in Mario?
Yeah.
Am I getting that correct?
I know there is a quirk of the South Jersey accent that does that with the A's. I'm not sure if I'm doing it correctly or the opposite, but that's what I always call it. It's my native tongue. Super Mario Brothers.
I don't know. Super Mario sounds right. It sounds like it's okay.
Super Mario Brothers.
But Daria does not.
It was the 90s. I went over to my buddy's house. We played some Super Mario World, and then his older sister kicked us off to turn it on MTV and watch some Daria.
And sing some Alanis Morissette. Alanis Morissette, or however I imagine you pronounce it.
Alanis. No, that's like how my grandfather used to pronounce Atlantic City. It's just call it Atlantic.
What's going on?
Oh, well, guys, did you see? Trump's lost weight.
Oh, yeah. No,
What?
he looks sickly.
What?
Yeah.
I need a
Yeah.
picture. Somebody.
I mean, he lost weight in the same way that, like, someone with cancer loses weight.
What?
Yeah, and they're like, he looks fantastic.
Yeah, they're trying to spin it.
All right,
Yeah.
I'm looking for a picture.
It's like how Auschwitz was really a diet camp, if you think about it.
Did he lose weight?
I don't know. He looks gaunt.
Yeah, he's definitely lost.
Okay, yeah,
Weight.
the definitely in the jowls area you can
In
see
the
it.
belly. In the belly.
Good for him. Seems like he's got his Fitbit going.
Yeah, living his best life, dude.
Yeah, but all the people who love Trump, they all are like, he looks fantastic. He looks fantastic, and liberals are scared.
He looks even more like a dinosaur here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, more like someone that's transforming into a dinosaur. And I think he should lean into it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it actually kind of sounds like you're making reference to the Super Mario Brothers movie.
When are we not?
Oh my God, this picture. Holy shit, that's bad.
Right. Yeah, no, he looks sickly. He looks like clumps of hair fell off his head.
I'm sending you the picture. I'm sure you've seen it, but
Yeah, I mean, that's...
It's so bad, it makes me sad.
no, I'm not sad because, like, I don't care about people I disagree with.
No,
Yeah.
it's just
I
like
mean,
a
it's
reflexive
a-
bummer for me to look at. It's like irrational,
sort of
precognitive
picture.
reaction. I'm like, oh, ugh.
Yeah, it's like the sort of picture where if you saw your grandfather for the first time in like a month and a half and he suddenly looked like that and you'd tell him he looks good, but then you'd be worried.
Mm-hmm.
you know, I was having bouts of nostalgia recently over that 1 week period when he caught COVID. In between him catching COVID and coming out of the helicopter all roided out with his eyes like black, like he got predatored.
Yeah.
Ah, man. That was some good content. Now he's all like cancerous.
Yeah, you know, all we're getting from the new administration is slow motion videos of them walking. So it's like an epidemic amount of them.
Didn't Biden do a speech, a celebration
Yeah.
speech?
Just a speech about the American Rescue Plan that he did sign. And if you qualify, you should get some money this week if you haven't already. But
Have
yeah.
you?
No, I'm supposed to Wednesday.
I have not, and I'm also not showing up on that fucking IRS website, and I'm fucking pissed because I also didn't get my 6. So, yeah,
Took me about 2 months to get my 600.
never got my 6. I got my 12, and I got fuck all since then. I am pissed off.
Yeah, man, it sucks.
You want to get those? Well, now it's G-Bucks.
I don't
You know,
understand hip hop.
no G-Bucks because Joe Biden is in the pocket of Comrade G.
Oh, okay. I suppose.
We're getting those Chinese communist dollars.
Yeah.
Bunny, you had a lot. Let's hear the weekly Jokerification rant. You have one. I know. I've heard it. I've seen it. I've smelt it. Hit me with it.
So Ilhan Omar is proposing let's cancel all rent payments until next year. Right? It's bold. It's the kind of pushing thing that I like in theory. But what I'm jokerified about is that in the replies to her announcing this, several dozens of people just by first glance are like, actually, I love paying rent. I don't think it would be fair for me to live anywhere for free.
Oh my God.
Which is okay. If you feel that way, you could pay rent anyway. If this were to pass, you could choose because you love it so much that you're going to go ahead and pay rent anyway. But yes, that is what has me jokerified because this is a real block to some organizing that could be happening, because you've got people who are rent burdened, but who are like, this is how it should be. Like, or maybe like they're just being really myopic and their particular landlord is really nice in comparison to a really shitty one. It's maddening, though, just because I can just smell it on these people, that several of these people are not doing okay. It's not as if they're several of them are. So they can easily pay their rent or, figure it out. And they can't actually relate to someone who is figuring out what the least detrimental bill to go late on is. That is the reality that people are facing. And that's why I'm saying I appreciate the posturing even of it by Ilhan Omar, just to say like cancel rent for this long, like outright, as even an idea that's in the stratosphere. I do appreciate that about that, but I'm just like, oh my God, how could something like this even pass when so many people are like, no, people are horny for suffering, their own suffering, the perceived suffering of others. They want people who they think are bad and stupid and lazy to be punished. And that need like supersedes a common sense approach to a crisis that's looming should things get to somewhere closer to normal with a lot of vaccinations happening, right? We're looking at a huge eviction crisis in the country. So even though people are reacting to it very dramatically, what Omar's proposing is kind of a common sense idea about how to minimize, it's not even that progressive. It's a harm reduction situation.
That reminds me, I saw a New York Post article, the greatest newspaper of all time, with a story about a landlord who had a tenant that owed $14,000 in back rent, but lost her case because of the eviction moratorium, and that landlord is sleeping in her car. And I was like, hilarious. That's fucking awesome. Hell yeah.
Yeah, no.
And there's this real sob story, a picture of her in her car and the tenant who's like living her best life.
Yeah, I hope she's doing good. Good for her.
Yeah, it's great.
Good for her. Yeah, so that's my Jokerification of the week. I did have kind of a fun thing pop up early in the week for me personally. A bit of my feminist family lore has been at the bar.
Oh, are you part Native American?
No. My family is part of the history of a Native American community in Baltimore. So it's been family lore. Okay.
All right, you're Elizabeth Warrening out.
Yeah, no, I said that as an absolute joke. Are you actually part Native American?
No, what I am clarifying is that the bar my grandparents ran in Baltimore was a fixture, a hotspot for the Lumbee Indians of the area. So
all right, then.
We were contacted about 18 months ago by a historian who is writing about this community and this time period. And my grandparents' bar, the Volcano, was also once reported to be the meanest of the mean Indian bars. It was considered the meanest bar in Baltimore, and finally found the article or a microfiche of it from 1978 that's talking about it being the meanest bar, the meanest of the mean Indian bars, where someone was shot off their bar stool with a bow and arrow. So, so I've been told this story like a bazillion times growing up. Oh, the bar Yayam Babu ran. It was like really rough, but all the Lumbee Indians hung out there. And one time somebody got shot with a bow and arrow. So like I've heard this a bunch growing up, but so it was nice to get this confirmation of the news story that it was the meanest of the mean of the bars, and that it was indeed Lumbee Indian hotspot, and that somebody was in fact shot off a bar stool with a bow and arrow. A sort of well-known Lumbee boxer was one of the bouncers at the volcano, and my dad remembers him from growing up. So that was like kind of a fun thing to get confirmation on, because of course I take family stories with, at least a sliver of skepticism of whether the funny or exciting parts truly happened that way. So I was glad it wasn't just some weird apocryphal story about the bow and arrow.
Yeah, no, it does sound like a thing old people would make up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was an Indian bar. They shot someone with a bow and arrow.
So David Simon, let me write that pilot, huh? Let's do a Baltimore period piece. Anyway, but yes, that was kind of a cool thing.
Oh, that was your Be-More fan? Okay. I kind of assumed it was the Canadian side. But,
no. This is so it's my Greek grandparents. Which is, yeah. So, there's kind of a cool, outside community aspect. That's pretty Baltimore specific, which I'm not joking, David Simon, we could make it work. Yeah. And apparently, this historian from University of Maryland is writing a whole thing about this community. Apparently, they migrated from North Carolina in the 30s in a big chunk to the Baltimore area, and we're an active and visible Native American community for like 35 years. Now they've since sort of dispersed into, I don't know, suburbia, I guess.
That sounds a very weird form of genocide denial. Where did all the Native Americans go? Suburbia, I guess.
Well, I mean, I'm talking about like
yes, no,
them
I
being
understand.
around in the 70s
The
and 80s.
specific
They're
ones
just
in
not as...
Baltimore. Yes, I understand. But still.
That was kind of cool.
They all went to suburbia.
Yeah, I'm always down for somebody to find something at a library on microfiche. That's always a very satisfying conclusion to any story for me. So that was fun. It's the Ides of March tomorrow.
Oh, yeah. Happy Pi Day, everyone.
Yeah, it is Pi Day.
Yeah, that I guess we have.
We have the Vaush.
Yeah. Whatever, Vaush.
Well,
talk about Marxism, Leninism.
What was his thesis? That it doesn't exist.
Marxism, Leninism doesn't exist because Joseph Stalin made it up. And I took quotes of his. And the first one I had was Lenin did a lot of cool things, but governed in a different way during the revolution. I found that confusing, or at least...
It's a normie take.
The normie take?
Noam Chomsky take.
Well, to me, it felt like it treated it like it was an election. Like it treated the revolution like it was an election. Like, oh yeah, Biden got elected and now he's governing in a different way than he promised.
I mean, the noting that Lenin, specifically in State and Revolution, but also like in other works, tended to err more on a decentralizing, libertarian, if you will, end of things versus his governing style is an extremely oft-repeated thing. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's superficially, I guess, correct.
And his reason for it was that power does corrupt.
Yeah, that's stupid. That's just incredibly dumb. The reason for it, among other things, is he died in what? 22, 23?
Yeah, 23, 24, I think.
23, 24. January of 24. So that's 6-7 years he was in power, of which... Okay, so that was 17 to 23.
Russian Civil War, war with Poland... and I think the thing that's mostly what Vaush is talking about is that basically Eastern Europe did become a bunch of Soviet puppet states under him when he specifically said that he didn't want that?
I mean, Vaush is talking about under Lenin, there was a thing called the Red Terror. And yes, there are things that Lenin did that honestly are critiquable. There's the, formation of a one-party state wasn't necessarily needed as a governing philosophy for whatever 60 years or however long the fucking Soviet Union lasted. You had the Red Terror, you had this, that, and the other thing all occurred under Lenin technically. And you also had an extremely brutal civil war, and you had the White Terror going on at the same time. And it's not fucking power corrupts, it's responding to active situations on the ground, frankly.
Yeah, and there was no context to that. What did you think, Bunny? Did you watch it, or what do you think of liberals and anarchists who say that things communists do that are bad is because power corrupts them, which I do feel like is a liberal, or in Vaush's case, like a anarchist retort to be Tanky's bad.
Fair, I guess, on a total superficial level. But what Vaush seems to be talking about is, as always, seemingly fixating on people he finds annoying in a specific way, and then working backwards from there. Yes. And then extrapolating a whole seemingly mapped out argument against it, where he has a very provocative title, it doesn't exist, man. And then I liked that one reaction that girl did, and then
Luna?
Yeah, Luna. And then he was like, oh, I want to talk to her. She doesn't have any idea what I even really think. And this is what irritates me about this whole wavelength of people, where it's okay, if we don't know what you think in this fucking 10-minute video or whatever, you have failed. It's not because you're so complex and fancy high IQ boy. I'm over it.
Which kind of gets into the big claim that he makes, which is Marxism-Leninism is a bastard synthesization of two separate ideologies that were combined by Stalin and by Stalinists to try to form some cohesive Soviet ideology for political engagement. And he follows that up with Stalin sure as shit wasn't a Marxist-Leninist, and then third world revolutionaries are smart, but Western tankies are stupid. And it does seem like he formed that first thought only because of the third thought.
Yeah.
He doesn't like this subgroup of people that are justifiably mean to him sometimes and terrible themselves in other times.
Even if I agreed with what he thought, I just hate him because he's a debate me guy. It's a false premise we need to stop validating. There's no such thing as a real debate. Even formal debate is not an actual debate exchange of ideas. There's no objective metric to who has a better argument and who will win. This is something that happens in movies,
It's a spectacle.
The spectacle, but also it's just me particularly, I have never been able to publicly talk about or explore what I'm thinking philosophically or politically without some sort of response in, no, you're wrong, and why don't you debate me about this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Instead of being curious what I'm discovering in whatever I'm discussing, it becomes this very binary thing. Who cares if he even proves himself right in this narrow view of it, quote unquote, not being real? How could this matter to someone who supposedly cares about the important aspects and it doesn't get caught up in silly blah blah blah?
That is one of the things with Vaush, is the only people who are worse at him than this would be the sort of amateurist workerist, post-left, whatever you want to call him. But he simultaneously purports to be the relatable man against all you fucking weirdos who keep saying the word praxis and not knowing what it means. And at the same time, his entire ideology is seeped in this very specific subculture that is so fucking obtuse and abstract and removed from any fucking normal society.
Which is kind of the tell when he says that about tankies or Marxist-Leninists, because he makes that claim about them.
Right, which is, to be fair, kind of true given the sort of tankies he's talking about. And I will say, like, yes, there is a very online contingent of tankies that he's discussing, but these are other weirdos you're talking about that you encounter online because you don't have any sort of life. These are the people you run into because you all are gathered together not doing anything that matters.
Yeah. Well, and then it's very much this policing of hypotheticals. Well, if you agree with this, then honestly, who gives a shit other than that they're annoying about tankies online? I
know Marlowe has a lot of experience with tankies, but have you encountered online Marxist-Leninists or even international Marxist-Leninists?
Well, yes. I just don't know any that are annoying. Or I know people who identify as Marxist-Leninist. I have people who live and work in China who would identify as personally Marxist-Leninist.
Maoist.
Yeah.
They would generally call themselves Marxist-Leninists, socialism with Chinese characteristics, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the thing that I find interesting, the most interesting comment he made, which I think we can kind of pull the thread out, is he says at one point, it really hammers home how much being a communist is an identity and an aesthetic, which is ironically anti-communist. I have so many thoughts on this, but I'm sure you guys do too, as we are on a communist podcast. The communist identity it's a weird lens to look at political engagement through for me, because it's so absent from anywhere but an online space, like in day to day. And I think he's talking about mostly American, but, also European or even some like global South Marxist-Leninists or communists. And to me, it was weird because shouldn't that be something that's celebrated by someone like Vaush, who is individualistic in a certain regard, where he, like, identity is a thing that is important generally. So why is somebody having an identity not important, or why is it something that dismisses somebody? And I think that the key word is like that aesthetic thing, where he views it as a vacuous, internally contradictory thing. Therefore, it's merely for appearances and can be dismissed out of hand. And that's the real chauvinistic kind of thing to tell a whole subculture of people that, you're going through your goth phase, you'll get out of this. You'll cut your hair one day. Like,
who's Vaush's dad, right? Somebody in Vaush's life is this guy who thinks these things are so lame, or would be so critical. This is the sense I get, at least. And he's trying to justify some amorphous figure's disdain for people feeling comfortable referring to themselves as communists, as Marxist-Leninists. Like, he's retrofitting it as if it's this intellectual argument. I mean, that's just what I see, because I think it's very common. I think this idea that you're just saying you're communist or being leftist or whatever to, like, be cool for a little while you're a fucking idiot dipshit is a very typical anti-communist propaganda. And I think there is a segment of people who see themselves somewhat leftist, somewhere on the left, but they're uncomfortable with
identity.
With identity.
And we're here to tell you it's okay.
Yeah, it's fine. Also, I just don't think it's that serious. When I refer to myself as communist, it's either to convey a real political ideology, or sometimes it is also to be provocative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm aware of that. I know that there's a lot of people I can talk to that if I tell them what I think about things without labeling it as explicitly communist, they're very open to it in a way that they are not open to the idea of communism. They think, So, I mean, this is a real kind of vibe that is out there. I just don't think it's an important one to validate or try to sort of make some Frankenstein approach that pleases the people who are just sort of, they just were noshing on that anti-commie propaganda.
With both Vaush on the one hand and the post-left or whatever other hand, there's something to be said for the fact that, frankly, socialism and Marxism starts from the notion that, for the most part, the vast majority of us are working class, and it doesn't really have to do with how much money you have or your social proclivities or whatever. And to spend so much time implicitly separating yourself from the working class by trying to divine out of the tea leaves what the working class thinks.
Yeah.
What the fuck do you think, motherfucker? Have some fucking self-confidence. What made you a socialist? What made you a communist? Why are you here? Why wouldn't that work for someone else?
Yes, and he's talked about his identity and how he arrived at libertarian socialism or whatever. But I've heard it mostly about anarchism, that it's a thing that's like a phase or an identity. Oh, you're going through your anarchist phase, you'll grow up eventually. And it's weird to hear it coming from somebody who has an identity that's so oft dismissed and just projecting that on another subculture or another political identity. The thing that bothered me the most, and this gets into the Luna thing, was the way in which it removed agency and sovereignty from the people who describe themselves as that, and similarly the nations that describe themselves as Marxist-Leninists. And Luna was very upset. I think she couldn't finish the video because it upset her so much that he would just swipe indiscriminately at a group of people that describe themselves with these traces or signifiers. And it's the one question of who are we addressing and what are we addressing? And there's a kind of conflation. The who are these online people he doesn't like arguing against because they're, in his words, reductive or anal retentive or theory nerds or performative revolutionaries. And on the other hand, it's he's addressing also the theory that these theory nerds, and, there's something I think that's where he's attacking, this ideology, which is, how many nation states consider themselves Marxist-Leninists? At least
today,
6, 7. Yeah.
China, North Korea, Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam, 5. Cuba would be 6. And then there's several others I'm forgetting right now.
And to say that it doesn't exist is kind of silly. I mean, I understand his argument, and Marlowe, you've gone on about why you agree with the argument for the ideology not being coherent, but that doesn't mean
reasons why I don't call myself a Marxist-Leninist. They're not the reasons Vaush is necessarily saying, but yeah, sure, there's reasons I criticize Marxism-Leninism. I'm not a Marxist-Leninist. I'll criticize it, but he's really... It's so fucking... his criticisms are just... They don't matter.
Well, I mean, it was cool to put together that Vaush doesn't believe in Vietnam.
Yeah. Or
he thinks it's like that conspiracy theory that Iceland or whatever doesn't exist.
That is Finland.
Finland,
I think.
yeah.
Yeah, so it's like that, but for Vietnam.
I don't know. Is that what he's arguing? He's arguing that like Marxism, Leninism isn't coherent more than it is that it doesn't exist.
Well, okay, here's the thing. I would actually categorize his argument as being Marxism, Leninism is alienated ideologically to Marxism or Lenin. It's sort of what he's saying is that like, oh, well, that's not what Marx said or what Lenin said. But then he says like, oh, they're two separate ideologies that are mashed together. So, yeah, I don't know quite what he's saying. Because, I mean, if he's saying like, oh, Stalin invented Marxism, Leninism, then...
I did read some Stalin for this. You know, I did some homework, and I found the quote, Leninism is Marxism of the era of imperialism and the proletarian revolution. To be more exact, Leninism is the theory and tactics of the proletarian revolution in general, the theory and tactics of the dictatorship of the proletariat in particular. Marx and Engels pursued their activities in the pre-revolutionary period when developed imperialism did not yet exist, in a period of and it goes on, but it's basically Marxism is pre-revolution and Lenin is post-revolution.
I mean, from what you said, the quote-unquote era of imperialism, which is something Lenin kind of did identify as this is an emergent development in capitalism that happens since Marx died. And
which is why World War I was called, or Lenin called it, the imperialist war.
Right. I mean, and also something I tend to disagree with Lenin on, but like, yeah, you know, whatever. I'm not going to pretend it's not a coherent theory. It's not my theory, but yeah, I don't know. Also, like, Stalin, frankly, get over your anarchist phase, bud. There, I said it. Like, grow the fuck up, Stalin. That's my one thing with that I like about Bourdiga is it's like, yeah, the problem with Stalin isn't that he's too authoritarian. The problem with Stalin is he just wasn't Stalinist enough, really, if you think about it. This has been Marlowe's Left Comment Hour.
Well, also, I mean, I think it's fair to Vaush. I feel like every time I say it differently.
Yeah, well, you don't make fun of me for my Vaush pronunciation like you do my Daria.
Saying something like Marxist-Leninism is Stalinism, basically, is something that sounds true to a lot of dummies. Like,
Marlowe's arguing that it is true.
But wasn't that Luna's point, is that you have other places?
Yes, you do. No, yes, there are other things that call themselves Marxism-Leninism that is not Stalinism. Like, that's the other side of it. But, like, Marxism-Leninism that did, in fact, emerge after Stalin wrote, like, 3 different books and was leader of the Soviet Union for 30 years, it changed somewhat often and was pretty politically expedient for Stalin, more so than it was based off of Marxism and Leninism. That's all I'm going to say. Yeah. Like, does that mean Ho Chi Minh is a Stalinist? Fucking no, obviously not. Like,
and see, the funny part is, well, not the funny part. Marxist-Leninists argue that Stalinism doesn't exist.
Right, which is stupid. It does exist. And, like, just call it Stalinism and be okay with that. Like, fine, yeah, socialism in one country. That's a great idea that Stalin came up with. You should run with that. That has a name. It's called Marxism. It's called Stalinism, really. Because guess what? Vietnam never really talked about socialism in one country because it didn't fucking apply to that decade or country. It's almost like it was kind of a thing.
So, Marlowe, what you're saying is you're siding with the anarchist you're going through your anarchist phase.
Yeah, no, because unlike Stalin, I've read a book. But, I just, it's like...
Wait, are you saying Vaush? Unlike Vaush?
Well, yes, him too. Both him and Stalin have never read a goddamn book in their lives.
Vaush.
I don't know. Like, yeah, the kind of abandonment of internationalism for this fortress protectionism of the so-called socialist state should be seen as an abandonment of Leninism to some degree. Maybe a little bit, considering it's the opposite of what I said. I'm just saying. But, sure, their material conditions changed. Great, whatever. Fuck it. Have fun, kids. I still, fucking appreciate talking to a Stalinist more than I can talk to someone like Vaush. So,
what you're saying, Stalin, great leader of Soviet Union or greatest leader of Soviet Union?
Yeah, he's just a kid who got over his anarchist phase.
So Stalin never got over his anarchist phase. You're going through your anarchist phase.
Stalin and Vaush have more in common than either of them care to admit.
Stalin's ghost is on that Twitch stream all the time. Like, this fucking guy.
Well, it's haunting him. His mustache and his little hand wave and his gulags. Yeah, I've always seen anti-communism is always going to be anti-Stalinism in a large portion of the world. And when anybody says, I'm a communist, the response is, well, then you must defend Stalin. There's this kind of the Stalinist superego of capitalism. When capitalism is met with any social democratic reform, the knee-jerk reaction by capitalists is, we don't want to be like Stalin.
Sounds like some gay Tari shit.
And that's...
I don't have a pun for Toulouse, though, so that's all I got.
I thought it was a Fisher thing.
Actually, that is probably a Fisher thing now that I think
it was
of it.
Whatever. He talked about Stalinism being like this force that, haunts the welfare system of the UK. And any expansion of welfare systems means you're like Stalin, which is...
Dyke, Luz, and gay Tari.
But I just feel that way watching Vaush. His knee-jerk reaction is to set up tankies as this superego or straw man to argue against in order to say communism isn't real or don't be a communist or don't identify as a communist.
The worst fucking part is they all fucking call me a goddamn tanky.
Who's they?
The Jews. I don't know. They. The people. No, all these fucking Vaush, they always fucking call me a tanky, and here I've been just, being an asshole and saying, actually Vaush sort of had said the right thing through incredibly stupid means about Stalin being a shitty theorist. But, they always fucking call me a tanky, and it sucks, because I'm not. I'm fucking revisionist as hell. Well, I mean, I'm not. I'm actually the least revisionist. The tankies are the revisionists. But, I get no love from anyone. I'm a man without a country. A true internationalist.
See, Hassan Piker is the revisionist.
Yeah. Which is
You're
why
the orthodox.
Yes, I'm the orthodox.
And Bunny, what are you?
I'm a Marianne Williamson socialist.
Oh. My favorite part of any DSA meeting is when it's 5 guys sitting around the table and 1 woman, and they have something remotely Marxist feminist related that someone needs to volunteer for. And everyone just looks at the one woman until she invariably volunteers for it. It's great. It happens every time, and it fucking rules.
Yeah, I had that experience in the media working group where there wasn't 1 woman, there was 1 gender non-conforming person.
Okay.
It just pissed me off because every guy would just come up with their laptop. The Twitter guy showed the stats of the Twitter, and the Facebook guy showed the stats of the Facebook. And it'd always be like, there are too many white men.
Mm-hmm.
There are too many white men clicking on our links and not enough women. And I'm looking around at everyone going, yeah, hello. What? It is like the joke about, oh, I am nothing kind of thing. Where it's just flagellating yourself for the obvious and not, I don't know if it's necessarily something that really needed that much attention other than a mild acknowledgement that the DSA has a pretty monochromatic gender and
Which
racial
also,
makeup.
for the record, North Brooklyn DSA is fairly diverse, but the media working group certainly is not.
Right.
I'll give them that.
Have you been in that position, Bunny, of being the only woman in a sea of white men?
I do stand-up comedy, so yes.
And have you all been talking about socialism, and then you're like, Marianne Williamson is my spirit socialist?
Well, no, this is, I mean, like, this is a thing that happens, is that if they say something in a space where this is being discussed, if I say something that deviates from a dude's boundaries of what he considers like cool and not cool to be considered in a discussion of socialism or politics, sometimes I'll get a reaction like they're disappointed in me. Frankly, it's not all ironic support for Marianne Williamson. Sometimes she frames things in a very effective way that deserves to be appreciated. If you can't see that because you want to believe she's some bitch who sells crystals, which that's how I know someone isn't actually familiar with Marianne Williamson, because she's never said a goddamn thing about crystals in her entire weird woo-woo career. Certainly, though, I've definitely spent more time in spaces with all white men who are uncomfortable with the idea of socialism than I have gotten credit where credit's due. There's a lot of white guys in DSA and adjacent who try very hard to listen and do their best and etc. So
thank you, Bunny.
Well, I sometimes think it's like it's easy for people to be like, it's just a bunch of white guys fucking with their thumbs up their asses, and like, you know, some people are trying to do stuff. It's very different vibe to me than like what I experienced way back in the day, like Occupy Wall Street, right? Where Occupy Wall Street very quickly turned into this like white guys talking over people, being like, the rules are we gotta blah, 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 and feeling like the cool things that seemed like could happen were just all dissipated under that. And I don't get that feeling. And I think I don't know, everything's been so volatile and crazy. It's easy to forget that DSA organizing and membership has grown by like the hundreds of thousands in just like the last 5-6 years. Something's going somewhere. You know, not to be too like, let's look at the bright side, guys.
Hopeful. But nobody
yeah,
should be hopeful.
But at a certain point, it is irritating. And this is something else that kind of irritates me about Vaush himself, is that there's this conflation of misery and intelligence that is a lot of times stupid, like a commitment to overcorrecting into pessimism in order to never be seen as too hopeful or as dumb if the thing you hoped for didn't happen. It's not a framing that gets us to like good solutions. It's just sort of a waste of time. So I don't know. I do think it's important to say there are good ones out there. It's also
dudes rock.
Yeah, dudes rock. But it is fair. Like it'll happen where like, why are we having this big problem? Why isn't this appealing to women and blah, blah, blah. There is a difficulty like in the moment to sometimes listen to individual women.
Especially if there are none of them in the room.
Yeah. When Marianne was running and everything, that was also very revealing because people were very nasty about her presence. Honestly, it was mostly, I'd say, a lot of liberals who were very uncomfortable with the Marianne Williamson candidacy. I mean, also, I think politics should be fun. Something about it should make you feel good. And even when she kind of said, oh, good job, Joe Biden, on the speech he gave the other night. I ignored it. But she's reliably, in my experience, coming from a place that has similar intentions as I do, ideally. I don't know if it's just that she is a woman. I don't know if it's that she's in this woo-woo space that's kind of more traditionally feminine in some ways. But I think that's a factor too. Because even a lot of the women who are part of the visible left, a lot of them are like the fucking Red Scare girls, where they're almost showing off their not caring about traditionally feminine things in a way that exceeds the bounds of believability to me. So, like worrying about the welfare of children is like a different thing than thinking women should be getting pregnant, right? Like Marianne talks a lot about the welfare of children directly. She talks about focusing on their welfare as a good starting point for policy making in general, which is a point I don't disagree with. The United States hates children. We're very hostile to them and whatever. And then you have people who call themselves leftists or whatever, but are like weirdly returning to like traditional gender role ideas about, when bitches should get knocked up and shit. Which to me is like, goes to a eugenics place, because then we're talking about the right times to reproduce and who should reproduce when and what you can abort a baby in utero if it gets into either a eugenics or a like weird philosophical pro-lifey debate, neither of which address the material needs of children and people. It's the kind of thing where people can be like, oh, fuck Marianne, she's so silly, but she is actually more often talking about the material needs of the most vulnerable among us. So fuck off. It's how I feel.
Off.
Full disclosure, I am doing a little gig on a new app called Cappuccino where I'm doing like a daily astrology report. So
that's the best way this episode could end.
Yeah. It's,
link in the description, bitches.
Yes, please join the app and hear
subscribe.
That's right. Like, subscribe, follow.
Not to this podcast, but to the Cappuccino.
Yes, the Cappuccino app. It's
the Al Pacino Cappuccino.
Yeah, so that's my plug for this week. You guys got anything else?
Where I happen to be at in the Americans, it's getting steamy and exciting. Edge of your seat thriller, everybody.
Oh, nice.
Great show from 8 years ago. Our sponsor is whatever show that's almost a decade old that I happen to be watching right now.
That's right. Pinko, Commie, Slutz, sponsored by the Americans from 2007. I don't know.
On FX.
On
but
FX.
You can't watch it there. You have to watch it on Amazon Prime because FX no longer runs it because the show is old.
It was still on 2 years ago, I think.
I think it's like 2013 to 2018.
Something like that. All right, guys. Watch The Americans, I guess.
And then let Bunny read your tarot or whatever the fuck it is.
Yeah, I'll tell you about the planets and what they're doing. And it was a new moon last night. So did you set some intentions? Yeah, that kind of stuff.
I was basically calling you a swarthy.
We got that one.
Was the general.
All right, bye, guys.
Bye.
Did I cut out again?
I've said this before, but I say a lot of stuff online, I get a lot of criticism, which is great. A lot of the people online think that I'm a liberal. A lot of the people online think that land back is an ethno-state. And they call me a pedo all the time. So a lot of the people online think that I'm a liberal. visage comes together.